Hey everybody, it's Jackie Hale with Equine Sports Council. I'm here with my business partner Shane Darnell, and we have Rebecca Cooper again with Ledyard Farm in New York, and our special guest is Stephen Kinney of the Morgan Horse Magazine. Stephen, you have got an upcoming series on the Indian breeding programs back during the Depression for Morgans. It's a 5-part series. Can you tell us a little about that?
I can, and by the way, it's not upcoming. We published it in 2018 and 2019. But I appreciate you asking me to talk a little bit about the kind of history recorded at the Morgan Horse Magazine, because we do know that the Morgan breed is so entwined in American history and culture. And some of the things we know is the Morgan breed was used heavily in the Civil War. Thousands of horses departed New England to be mounts for the military, for the cavalry during those years. We know that the Morgan was heavily involved in settling the ranches of the West, but we came across a series. It was already written, and the author, the historical author, Gail Purley, approached us and said, I have a 5-part series on the Morgan breeding programs of the Indian agricultural schools. And I'll make a little confession. I thought, gosh, this is going to be pretty dry history. Probably a lot of pictures of Morgans nobody knows about anymore. But the articles were complete. They were beautifully researched and written. And they were also all around 2,500 words, so relatively brief to produce and publish. And we acquired the series from Gail. And I did go into it with maybe a prejudice or something that, well, this is going to be dry history. And then I started reading it, and it was amazing. As part of the New Deal after the Depression, the American government decided to bring aid to the communities of Native American people by funding agricultural schools, and part of those schools was breeding Morgan horses. And Morgans from the government farm in Vermont, from the Brunk farms in Illinois, from the LU Sheep Ranch, were shipped to or acquired by these Indian schools in the heartland, in the Dakotas, Oklahoma, Kansas. And a lot of well-known horses in Morgan pedigrees went there. Barbary, Lindsley, Red Coral. And that alone was interesting history, that these schools helped those communities farm, have transportation. But then another unique thing happened. People stopped breeding horses on a very large scale after mechanization, after the war years. And the registry, there was a year in the 30s or 40s when the registry, the Morgan Horse Registry, registered only 78 foals, but the Indian schools kept on breeding. And as a result, people like Helen Brunk Greenwald went back to the Indian schools to refresh their breeding stock by acquiring horses. And I came to the end of that 5-part series saying, oh my gosh, if we hadn't have had those breeding programs, we wouldn't recognize our breed today. And I pulled together a few examples, and you'll have some pictures that you can post as a result. But please consider, had we not had the Chilocco Indian School program in Oklahoma, we would never have had the stallion Beamington. Beamington, of course, such an influential sire. He sired world champions like Just a Joy and Vanu Love Story and so many others. We had him in the breed because Ma Greenwald went back to the Indian schools and bought the mare Ellen Barr, his dam. Had we not had those Indian school breeding programs, we would not have had the stallion Senator Barr. And Senator Barr was acquired by a young Mark Stanke in partnership with Helen Brunk Greenwald. And he is the foundation sire of Mary Hill Farm. And I think you can literally accept this as fact. Every horse, every world champion with the Mary Hill prefix has descended in one way or another from this horse. That includes the great pleasure horse, Mary Hill Hooligan. And it includes the current world champion stallion who is on our cover of the breeding guide, Mary Hill After Hours GCH.
And that's particularly interesting to us as well with the New York Service Stallion auction, as that is one of the very popular stallions of auctions is Mary Hill After Hours. So we're thrilled to have him in our program, but didn't know any of this information about how that worked in with some American history.
I know, it's fascinating. There's another family, one of the sires that was purchased for the Pine Ridge Reservation in the Dakotas was a young horse, a weanling, that they named Red Coral. They named him Red Coral because one of the founders of the Indian Agricultural School programs was a man named L.E. Coral, and the horse was named in his honor. Had we not had Red Coral, we would not have today the horses of the Morgan Quest prefix, the wonderful reining horses. Morgan Quest native son has been a world champion reiner and has sired a number of world champion reiners. So again, it seems like a small piece of history, but it has such a lasting effect on how our breed has been part of the American culture, that those horses were bred at that time in those places and that we have these descendants today.
Yeah, if I've not learned anything from today's call, Stephen, with you, is that just one or two horses have made a huge impact in our breed down the line. It's crazy.
It is, and it's fascinating where it happened and how we know these horses were so important to cavalry officers. But to know that they went to these Indian agricultural schools in more obscure parts of the heartland and still had such an influence across both our culture and our breed. Just fascinating.
Stephen, were the horses that were bred there, did they remain property of that school, or did any of them go back to Vermont, or who owned the horses when the program was done?
The horses, I can't answer that question with complete accuracy. Some of the horses were loaned to the agricultural schools. Red Coral himself, the stallion Lindsley, they stood at stud. They bred the herds of mares at more than one of those schools, so they would be interchanged somewhat. But the foals that were produced were also a cash crop for those Indian schools and Morgan breeders, some of the Western ranch breeders, the LU Sheep Ranch, Helen Brunk Greenwald herself went to the schools and purchased young stock to bring back to their farms. And many of the original horses were sent there, not just from the government farm, I forgot to mention, but from some of the Army remount stations as well. They were made available to the schools as a U.S. government program.
What a great program, yeah.
And Stephen, I guess they worked with the registry at that time, and when the Indian schools bred and had foals on the ground, they would register them with the registry. Is that how it worked?
A large quantity of those horses were registered, and we have the descendants today as a result. But keep in mind, a lot of those ranches and breeding programs, the LU Sheep Ranch, for instance, they wouldn't register every horse that they gelded and used for ranch work. So there were many purebred Morgans bred in some of those programs that were forever lost to the breed registry, but they weren't breeding horses. They were geldings used for ranch work and that kind of thing.
Well, Stephen, this is a very, very interesting article. I can't thank you enough for spending time with us to cover this. I would have never known about the Indian schools breeding Morgan horses for us. Do you know if they also bred other breeds as well, or was it just Morgans?
Many breeds, because of the remount programs and so on, multiple breeds were sent there. The Morgan was by far the dominant and the favorite. And Shane, I would also mention, I should really give kudos to Gail Purley, the author of these articles. And please also mention they are all available. They're posted on our website in our archives.
Right. Here's the link that Stephen mentioned. It's morganhorse.com, and then go to the magazine link, and then you'll see the archives. And both of these, this 5-part series article we're talking about is there. It was previously published. And then all the articles that they publish are out there. So you can read them online as well. Well, Stephen, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Great to spend time with you today.
Well, thank you as well. I'm so glad that you are giving a bit of PR to the Morgan magazine. We all enjoy what we do so much, and we couldn't do it without the support of the Morgan community.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Great.